So first, thank you, Takeshi Miyazawa, for being here and giving me a little bit of your time to speak about comic books.
Of course.
Because you are a comic book artist. But that since it's the first time we speak together, I'm always starting by the most basic question, which is, who are you? Can you introduce yourself a little bit to our French audience?
Sure. My name is Takeshi Miyazawa. I was originally born in Canada, did all my schooling in Canada, and then I moved to Japan to try to pursue a manga career. But I'm sorry, going back, I did publish with Marvel and some indie stuff while I was in Canada, and then I moved eventually to Japan, and it was very difficult to try to break into the manga industry, so I stuck with the American comic books, and I've been drawing for Marvel most of my career, Miss Marvel and Spider-Gwen and
Silk,
Runaways, and I've also been doing a lot of indie stuff as well, mostly with Greg Pak. So we did a book called Mech Cadets, and it's been turned into a Netflix show, and I'm really happy with it. And
that quite sums it up for now, because you're not at the end of your career right
just
now.
Getting started.
Yeah, but you mentioned that you wanted to try to break into the manga field, and so we won't be saying that you're still doing American comic books by default because you did not break it. What was difficult for you? Is it because you weren't born into Japan? Or?
I think the biggest problem I had was I wasn't used to writing. So I should have written a story before moving to Japan. So then I could have just started meeting editors and explaining my story. But I was just too eager to get started that I moved. And then I'm like, okay, let's think of a story. And by the time because I wasn't working, I was just trying to write, and all my savings were going down. And I came to a point where I'm like, I need to work again. And so I ended up going back to Marvel.
Okay, so no, because I was thinking that it might have been more like a way, a way of pacing the stories, which is quite different, a way of storytelling that maybe did not suit you.
I did have a few meetings with publishers, and there were talks of some of the pacing was odd for them, or I was doing some things that they weren't used to, but it wasn't anything that was enough to break the deal. Like they were happy with the way I was drawing and how I was telling the story. It's just that the story just didn't come together, and I repeatedly did fixes and edits, and it's just the way the Japanese publishers work. They want to get it perfect, and they make you do it over and over and over, and there's really no end in sight when you're in that loop. And eventually I just couldn't do it, and I gave up. But
okay, but let's switch back to the beginnings, the origin story of Takeshi Miyazawa. Were you attracted to drawings since the youngest of age?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 45 now. I'm quite old. There was no internet, right? And I lived in the suburbs of Toronto, so you go outside and play, or you stay indoors and read a book or draw. And my father drew a little bit, so I remember being inspired by him. And so that's how I started to draw, copying his art. And he would draw my Transformers, and I was like amazed that you could see something 3D on a 2D surface. And that was kind of the beginning. And then watching cartoons and G.I. Joe, Transformers, that sort of thing.
And you also had access to comic books?
My father worked for Toyota, so he would have business trips to Japan. And he would bring back like kids comics or manga for me. And that's how I learned Japanese initially, and how I learned to read manga. And of course, I went to Saturday school to learn Japanese as well. So my parents are really strict about that.
But so you would really say that your artistic influences are more like Japanese?
Yeah, I would say like Dragon Ball and Kinnikuman and Captain Tsubasa and stuff like that was my initial introduction to comics. My older brother read X-Men, so I had a passing knowledge of Western stuff, but I was more drawn to the simple sort of drawings of manga more.
Okay. And at what point did you decide that you wanted to be an artist and not just draw on paper, which is great, but at what point did you decide that you would earn your money for it?
Yeah, in high school, I've been drawing since I was a kid, but then I started to make my own comics in high school, and I got my dad to print them, photocopy them at work, and then I went downtown Toronto and sold them at comic stores just by myself. And usually the deal was like 50-50, whatever sold, I would give half to the store and then I would get the other half. And I think back now and I wasn't really thinking where that was going to go. I just wanted to do something and I was really passionate about it. And I wanted other people to read it other than my family and my friends. So from that though, like, I met Jay Torres, who was a writer, and I met so many more people through him. And it just got to a point where I'm like, I could do this. I can be a professional artist. And, you know, and luckily I met CB Cebulski, who was a Marvel.
So that's what the turning point, maybe?
Yeah, I would say so. And he wasn't working for Marvel back then. He had his own publisher. Yeah. And
he wasn't scouting for Marvel
no.
at that point.
He was doing indie stuff. He was translating manga, actually, and importing it into the States. And so it was very serendipitous, you know, meeting him. And then eventually he would be hired by Marvel. And then he asked me if I wanted to draw for them. So just this coincidence of luck for me.
And were you a fond of, or a fan, or just did you know about? You mentioned that your brother gave you X-Men comics, like, so I guess you were quite you had knowledge of this universe and these characters.
Yes, like I remember X-Men was huge, and I was a big fan of Rom. I don't know if you know Rom.
Well, I'm too young to have been. You know, Rom was out. I wasn't even born yet, but it's been republished this year. And it's going to be also republished in France this year.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so a lot of, I don't want to say old guys, but older guys are quite excited about it. Yeah?
Yes.
So I know.
I'm really excited to hear that. So like, I didn't know the entire history of the Marvel characters of the universes. I knew little bits and pieces. And of course the TV show was on in the 80s. So I watched the cartoon. And so just kind of connecting all the dots, you know. And
but when you got into your first Marvel project, were there any rules that you had to apply, like, you know, because you're an artist, so you've got your own vision about these characters, but I guess also there are some rules that you have to follow since it's not your own characters?
No, they were never really too strict on how I should draw or how I should tell a story. I'm really thankful for that. They've always sort of catered the book for my style. So I did like Mary Jane very early in my career.
Very great.
And then Runaways and more kind of younger readers type stuff. And you know how manga was getting really popular at that point. So I think I was just at the right time. I started to draw comics.
But would you say that maybe because you had this manga style that it would fit younger audiences because people would assume that young people read mangas compared to older people reading American comics?
Yeah, I'm sure there was sort of that marketing thinking of, you know, like kids like cartoons and manga, and they'll gravitate towards that more. But I think beyond that, like the solid storytelling and more, I guess, not so heavy drawings would be much easier to consume for kids. So, you know, that's how I thought about it and my perspective on what my role was when I was drawing for Marvel.
Okay, what's the most important to you for when you're starting a project? Is it to have the character designs, or is it more like the pacing, how much the breakdowns you're going to
I'm
get?
More of like a total, like a pace person. So I would read the script and then figure out where is the most important part of the issue, and I would basically mold the rest of the pages around that most important part. Character designs, they already exist most of the time that on the books I've jumped on, so I haven't worried too much about that. But you know, like I'm more about the momentum of a story, so I focus on that the most, I would say.
Because on my region, for example, it's more like teenage versions of these characters. So you had maybe not researches, but also to sketch, to do character designs and see with an editor is that would fit with their vision or with the writer.
Yeah, like I just the designs I did for that were just things I remember when I was in high school, and they weren't really superhero-y designs or anything, right? Just everyday life stuff. So I found it very easy to design those.
Okay, and I wanted to know also about the relationship that you've got in a Marvel team with the writer and the editor, and maybe the colorist also. How does that work? Is it? I often hear that it's always just email exchanges, and it doesn't go way beyond that. Is it true for you? Or?
I would categorize my style exactly like that. I get the script, and then I do somewhat detailed layouts, and then I just hear back from the editor on anything that needs to be changed. Sean McKeever was the writer on Mary Jane, and I don't recall ever talking to him directly, but I remember I would get feedback from him on what he liked and what he didn't like about the layouts, and I would just quickly change them.
Is it something hard for you to?
No.
I mean, not that you would have an ego or something like that, but sometimes, like, also the writer can also just accept the vision of the artist. So, is it something that you're doing, maybe even with Greg Pak?
The writers I've worked with have always been really open-minded and very forgiving, and I've never had like really bad comments, like maybe just minor fixes here and there. Just to clarify what they were doing, but no, maybe I'm lucky. I don't know. I've never experienced like you can't do this or you got to change that. So yeah.
And how do you choose, or do you choose the projects that you're doing in work for hire?
No, I've been asked what I'd like to draw, but mostly an opening happens and they're like, Takeshi, do you want to draw this? And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So, but I'd love to eventually draw like a Spider-Man story.
Okay, it really seems like easy for you then.
Yeah,
it isn't like you had the easy way. That's great. And I was also to go back on your creator-owned stuff like Mech Cadet.
Yeah.
So can you tell me the basics of this project?
So the initial, we had like a short story that we'd done for an Asian anthology comic, and it was the very beginnings of Mech Cadet. And so we made like an 8-page story, and then Greg wanted to expand on it. So eventually he talked to Boom Studios, and we got the green light to do a year's worth of books. And he expanded the story and the characters. And, I grew up watching Gundam and a lot of robot anime when I was a kid. And I was really drawn to that sort of underdog story, including those cool robots. And so I was like, yeah, of course. Like I'd love to be a part of it. And we did the first series, and then surprisingly, Netflix was interested in making a show, and it was very exciting. And that's out now, and it's very good. I'm very happy with it. And last year I just wrapped up the follow-up series to the first one. So that's where we are right now.
Is it harder to when you've got such gigantic characters like Mecha or
the scale?
Is it hard to manage the scale?
It was very difficult. I'm not used to drawing at such scale, and I wish I had been working digital at that point, but I wasn't. So drawing robots, it's quite hard to think of the perspective and keeping the form of the robots consistent. So that was quite difficult. But
and even though if you have to think about the angles that you have to look at, if you're always looking at from the human point of view or not.
Yeah, I tried. Like I used like browsers, 3D programs like SketchUp and stuff, and I would just have a robot and I would shift the angle and try to get it to make it look really big. But when it's a scene with people, with humans, it's easy because the humans are small and the robots are big. But when it's all robots, then that's how you kind of lose the scale compared to the world. So I was trying to include like parts of nature to try to offset the scale, but I don't know how successful I was, but I enjoyed drawing it. So,
is it hard to design a good giant robot
compared to like a human?
No. For you, the how do you know that a good how do you know that a mecha design is good? Like, how do you know that visually it works, or
I don't know. I guess
is it just in your gut, or are you talking also with Greg if he likes it?
For they're like the initial 4 robots. I just took the shapes, so like circles, triangles, and rectangles and stuff, and then I would just kind of mess around with that. And so if you look at those 4 robots, you can kind of see what shapes I was going for. But other than that, no. Like, and then of course they look kind of 80s anime robot. So it was helpful to have sort of a foundation from what I was working on. But
do you think that maybe the fact that when the first series came out, I think we weren't that long from the Pacific Rim movies also. I don't
definitely.
know if that
there were comparisons, but
like you could start a little bit like I think the first time I wrote about Mech Cadet was like Pacific Rim cross Harry Potter for the school school thing. I don't know
that's a very good description, I think. And Greg and I are about representation, and so we wanted to emphasize the Asian characters and different body types, and I think we did enough to make it distinct and original.
But that it is like something that really struck you as important because you two are Asian writers and artists, and something that you wanted to, because I don't know how the market is in the United States about in terms of Asian people doing the comics. So
I don't like having it the only part of a project. Of course, I'm Japanese Canadian, and I'm proud of my heritage. But I always try not to make it the only aspect of my work. So, like, I would like everybody to read it and be able to relate it in some way, and not just because they're Asian or So, it's
but still, you were thinking about the importance also of representation, like you said. So it's about to find a balance, maybe.
I would say so. Like my work for Marvel has been predominantly with like Caucasian characters. So. It was
Silk is
Silk is Korean. Yes. So it was nice. It was really fun to work on that book. So it was a fresh air. It was nice to change it up a little bit and be able to do things that I can relate to just a bit more than just a standard character, I guess. Yeah.
And do you? I think that might be an obvious question, but I guess you prefer working on creator-owned stuff than
I think at this point in my career, it's important to think ahead a little bit, and to own things and to have a bit of power in how your work is represented. So, of course, I love working for Marvel and the mainstream books, but it's also good to always remember where you came from and why you got into comics. For that, I like to do things that are more indie and things that I can just, there's no rules, right? Like I can draw whatever I want. And I think it's important to keep that aspect instead of burning out and, getting frustrated with superheroes and stuff. So.
But because you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that you had struggles with the writing when you tried to apply for the manga publishing. But are you still working on your writing? Is it something that we're going to see? Something that's written and drawn by Takeshi
It's a
Miyazawa?
perpetual kind of work in process. So I'm still like studying, and a lot of the books I read to try to learn something. So like novels and stuff, and even like TV shows I watch, and I'm trying to break down why this character exists, and so I don't know. There's nothing that's been forming into a project yet, but hopefully I would like to do something that I do 100%. So.
And what's going next for you after? Because you said that you've got a follow-up to Mech Cadet.
That's finished, and I've been taking the early part of this year off to try to learn digital art. So
because you were not doing work digitally before.
No, it was completely traditional, and I felt like I should learn some new tricks, and I've done like 2 covers so far on my Cintiq, and I'm already realizing that I can do way better effects and make it look way nicer than I've been doing on paper. And so maybe another month or 2, and I'll have enough skills that I can go 100% digital. And it took like 4 months to get to that point. So
yeah, what were your struggles?
I just couldn't understand
to do the digital transition.
Yeah, like how like the scale of the page on the screen is like, it's very basic, but like I couldn't get around that. And then the textual feel of the pen on the screen, it was very hard for me to adjust on that. And it just came with doing it multiple times, and it just clicks. You know, I can't even remember when it was, but I'm like, oh, this is very comfortable now, and I really understand what I'm doing. And of course, I bought like that screen you can put on. It's like a film you put on your screen, and it makes it feel like paper. And I've tried to adjust to it feeling traditional as much as I can. So that's helped a lot for me.
Okay, and so you would say that basically the way of working digitally for you is just a way to like add some effects, or maybe to go faster, or
faster is another thing.
Yeah.
Like backgrounds, I've been learning.
You miss to have like original art.
Yeah,
in terms of just collecting it, or just to sell it afterwards, because
my wife isn't very happy. But I met Daniel today, or at this con, and he's an inker. But but he told me how to make archival prints of pages, and so there's ways to get around not having originals, but making your own one-off print. You know, so that's another possibility for me.
Okay, so and any other create own stuff that you're planning to do, or can you tell us something?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. That's fine, fair game. Yeah. All right, thank you very much for your time, Takeshi.
Thank you.
It was really great.
Okay, bye.